There are moments in a person's life that exist beyond the reach of language. Moments so raw, so complete, so devastatingly tender that even the most gifted storyteller would struggle to find the right words for them. What happened in that hospital room when Zukai first held his newborn son in his arms was one of those moments. And when the tears came, they came not from sadness, not from pain, not from any of the complicated emotions this man had spent years performing in front of cameras. They came from something far simpler and far more powerful than anything a script had ever asked of him. They came from love meeting love for the very first time. The man who had made millions of viewers weep through fictional heartbreak was now weeping himself, and there was not a single camera crew in the room, not a single director behind a monitor nodding in satisfaction. There was just a father, a brand new, completely undone, irreversibly changed father, holding the most important thing he had ever held in his life. China felt it when the news broke. Not gradually, the way most news travels, building momentum through clicks and shares and algorithmic nudges. This news hit all at once, like a wave that had been gathering force just beyond the horizon before crashing into shore with everything it had. Zukai, one of the most beloved actors of his generation, the man whose face had graced the covers of magazines and whose performances had defined some of the most iconic romantic moments in recent Chinese television, had become a father, and he had cried in the most human, unguarded, unperformable way imaginable. The detail that undid everyone was not the fact of his tears, it was the image of his hands. Those hands, which fans had watched in countless scenes, reaching for leading ladies in candlelit palaces and rain-soaked courtyards, trembling slightly as they cradled something so small and so complete that the world outside suddenly felt enormous and irrelevant. Zukai, who stands with the kind of effortless physical authority that makes costume designers weep with gratitude, looked in that moment like every parent who has ever stood at the beginning of something they cannot fully comprehend. Awed, humbled, grateful beyond all articulation. To understand the full weight of this moment, you have to understand who Zukai is, not as a celebrity, but as a person who has been quietly revealing himself for years. He grew up in Shenzhen in an ordinary family, the kind of upbringing that gives a person both hunger and groundedness in equal measure. He had an elder brother. He liked street food. He studied finance at South China Agricultural University before the pull of something larger made him drop out and sign with a production company in 2016, a decision that looked impulsive from the outside and felt inevitable from the inside. He started as a model, winning competitions in Guangzhou on the strength of bone structure and quiet magnetism, before graduating to a screen career that exploded with a force nobody, perhaps not even him, had anticipated. When Story of Yangtze Palace aired in 2018, Zukai's portrayal of Fu Heng, the devoted, principled general who loved deeply and silently, turned him into a household name overnight. There was something about the way he played that character that felt less like acting and more like revelation. He was not performing devotion. He was drawing on a capacity for it that had always been there, waiting for the right story to call it forward. In the years that followed, through drama after drama, he became known not just for his looks, but for a quality that is far harder to manufacture: sincerity. Whether he was playing ancient warriors or modern professionals, whether he was in elaborate period costume or a sharp contemporary suit, there was always the sense that Zukai was genuinely present in every scene. He was not coasting on his face, though his face certainly did not hurt. He was working, caring, investing. That same quality, it turns out, he brought to love. His relationship with Tan Song-yoon had been one of the entertainment world's most carefully guarded and most enthusiastically theorized stories for years. They had the kind of chemistry on screen that made professional critics reach for words like electric and inevitable, and they had the kind of friendship off-screen that seemed, to anyone paying close attention, like something that had outgrown the boundaries of professional admiration a long time ago. Fans watched, fans speculated, fans made mood boards and timeline threads and compiled every shared glance into evidence files that would have impressed a detective. And then, slowly, the truth began to surface. The relationship was real, the marriage was real, and now, in a hospital room filled with the specific silence that only new life can create, the family was real. Imagine being in that corridor just outside, the kind of hospital hallway that smells of antiseptic and newness, lit by that flat, honest light that has no interest in flattery. Tan Song-yoon had done something extraordinary. She had moved through months of quiet, deliberate privacy, carrying their secret and their son simultaneously, with a grace that should surprise no one who has watched her work. She had played warriors and dreamers and fighters on screen. This was her greatest performance of endurance, and it was entirely her own. And then the boy arrived, and Zhu Kai held him. People who witnessed the moment, those fortunate enough to be in that inner circle of family and closest friends, described what they saw in terms that have since filtered out into the world and taken root in the imaginations of millions. They described a man who forgot, for a few extraordinary seconds, everything he had ever been trained to do in front of an audience. There was no composure, there was no considered reaction. There was just the tears arriving before he had any chance to decide whether to let them, the way the most true emotions always do. He held that baby the way you hold something you cannot believe is real, carefully, completely, as if the weight of him, small and warm and impossibly present, was reordering everything. Those who know Zhu Kai well have spoken about a man who was more emotionally intelligent in private than his public image has ever fully conveyed. He exercises hard, runs, cycles, pushes his body to its limits, has spoken about once training so intensely that he pushed himself to complete exhaustion just to feel in control of something. That drive, that intensity, that willingness to go all the way in whatever he is doing has always been part of him. What the birth of his son did was redirect all of that intensity towards something it had never quite touched before. He was not a man performing fatherhood, he was a man being ambushed by it in the best possible way. Tan Song-yoon, who had just done the hardest physical and emotional work of her life, watched her husband hold their son and reportedly laughed softly through her own tears. That detail, the laugh, is the one that makes the entire scene feel most real. It is the laugh of a woman who knows exactly who this man is, and who finds his complete undoing in this moment both deeply moving and entirely, tenderly predictable. She had always known this was in him. She had simply been waiting for their son to find it. The reaction from the public was something close to unanimous. Across social media, the comments were not the usual mixture of excitement and cynicism that celebrity news tends to attract. They were warm. They were personal. People wrote about their own first moments of parenthood. People wrote about their fathers. People wrote about love in its least complicated form, the kind that arrives before a child can speak or reason or disappoint, the kind that is simply given, without condition or caveat or performance. Zhu Kai crying in that hospital room became a mirror. Millions of people looked into it and saw something of themselves. There is a moment in the ancient Chinese concept of yuanfen, the idea of fated connection, the invisible thread that ties people together across time and circumstance, that this story seems to embody completely. Zhu Kai and Tan Song-yoon did not meet by accident. They met, yes, on a set, through the ordinary machinery of casting and production, but what happened between them was not ordinary. It was the kind of connection that two people recognize rather than discover, as if some part of them had always been moving towards each other, and the cameras and scripts were simply the landscape through which they found the path. Their son is the destination neither of them knew they were heading toward until they arrived. He will grow up hearing about the day his father cried, not from grief, not from loss, not from any of the sorrows that life will inevitably bring, but from joy so full it had nowhere else to go but out through the eyes of a man who had spent his entire adult life being watched, and had finally, in the most important moment of that life, forgotten anyone was watching at all. That is the scene no camera caught, the one that everyone is still talking about, the one that is, without question, the greatest performance Zhu Kai has ever given, except it was not a performance at all.